All right, so chapter 2, we've done a little bit with Excel already. And so chapter 2, we start talking about a little bit more things dealing with our formulas and our functions, okay? So normally in Excel, when you type in your cell references, so for example, cell reference would be A1, so a certain cell, that would be what they call a relative cell reference. And so what that is then is when you start copying your formulas, then Excel is going to try to figure out, and it's going to change what you want to do. Okay, so it's going to change and it's going to modify it. And you saw that when we did the lesson on Monday. You saw that when I copied all the formulas down and I went down the row, you saw that it was copying that. So an absolute cell reference, that provides a constant reference to a specific cell. So for example, I know, because I helped a couple of students with their SLO assessment actually for Excel, there are a few things that we want to stay constant. So for example, you're referring to the number of payments for the car note that you're figuring out, or you're trying to figure out, you want to stay consistent with the interest rate. Those would be things that you want to stay absolute. And so what that does is that tells Excel that no matter what, you want it to always consider those cells only. And in a mixed reference combines absolute and relative cell references. So again, you may tell Excel that you want to stay within the same column, but then to move different rows, for example. Okay. The F4 key on your keyboard is one way that you can use to toggle between relative, absolute, and mixed references. You can also, of course, edit them manually to insert. And so you're inserting the $sign, which is a special symbol that Excel uses to tell that you want to stay within either the column or the row. Okay. And so we see here, for example, we're figuring out the amount financed for a house. And so we have the house cost $300,000. We're going to go ahead and put down $45,000. And so to figure out, so the down payment then would be D2 times the down payment amount. So that's how you figure out how this is calculated. So you're putting down 15%. So you always want it to refer to that. So in order to do that, you would set it like so. Okay. And then you see here, copied formula contains D4 to E4. So it would be both of these to find out the amount that's being financed. Okay. And so we see then that this is relative. It's going to change as you copy it down. But this other one here for B4, it's always going to refer to this amount right here. All right. Hopefully I've explained that well to you. Again, if there's any questions, just stop me and we'll go ahead and we'll address those. All right. So now I'm going to talk about inserting functions. So there's a lot of different functions built within Excel. And so, for example, you may have the sum, which is used, and you see that here, that's used to add up a set of numbers. You might have an average that sets up that allows you to select your cells and then figure out the average. Again, we'll work with some of these in our lesson when we get there. And then also you may have minimum, max, you have count. There's a lot of different functions. You have the PMT function, which is used to figure out interest rates for loans. So there's payment amounts for loans. So there's a lot of things built into the program that allow you to simplify what you're doing. Okay. And so you can search for a specific function if you're not sure exactly what you're trying to do. There's some different categories there, and you have a list here. And then it gives you the syntax and a description, which tells you then what numbers, how you're going to plug it in. So for example, when we do the PMT function, there's some specific things that you have to do in order to make that work, and you have to put the numbers in a certain order, the cell references, okay? And so for example, here we're adding up a set of numbers here. So 10, 15, 20, and 25. And so you notice that A10 is selected, all right? And then you notice then that the sum, and then this would be A1 and then a colon A5. So what that's telling the computer is that you want to get the sum of all of those cells. So A1 through A5, okay? And so that would be the argument. You're typing that in, and then you hit OK, then it would give you the result, which is 75. All right. So again, sum allows you to figure out the sum of your numbers, so adding them up. Average gives you the average of the numbers. All right. And then median is the middle number. So it's not, sometimes that would be the average, sometimes it's not. It's the middle number, and then the minimum is the lowest number. Max is the highest number. Count counts your cells. All right. And then you have the today function, which is today, and then you have to put the parentheses, but you're not going to put anything in between the parentheses. There's no arguments that go with it. But today displays today's date. And so, for example, for today, it would be 3/25 of 2020. It would display. Now displays results and the time in 24-hour format. And so, for example, here would be 2/9/2018 at 14:09. So that would be what, 2 p.m. And then the if function. So if what it will do is it will show certain things. If it's true, it's going to report a certain number. If it's false, it will report a certain number, okay? So we see here in the example that for Tiffany, she had sales of $11,000. Well, for her, if she sold at least $10,000, then or more than $10,000, and she received a bonus of 500. So we see that Tiffany, she earned the bonus. We see that Jose and Rex, Jose only sold 10. He didn't sell more. Rex only sold 9. So neither Joe or Rex would be due a bonus. And so you can use the formula here in order to figure that out. Notice that the B2 and the B3 right here, those would need to be absolute references because we need Excel to always refer to those. Those things stay constant when you copy the formula down. So this list, it could have been, I mean, you could have had a couple hundred sales representatives, you know, and so you want those numbers to stay constant while you copy that down. But of course you want E2, which in this example would be here, this would be E3, E4. You do need that to change. And so that would be a relative cell reference. You would not have, you would just leave it as is. You wouldn't have to change it. Put the dollar signs in there. Okay. And then so for example here, this is the VLOOKUP function. So we use this in order we have like a table. So for example here you see this is a table showing grades. And then if they have to be within certain ranges. So we see here that Abbott, he earned 85%, so then that's a B. And so you look over here then. So from 85 to less than 90, that's a B. 90 and higher is an A. So you do this, and so you can use this in order to figure out, to do a lookup, a VLOOKUP. And in an H lookup does the same thing, but it does it I believe horizontal. So it's the annual rate divided by 12. That's really important. So that's the first part here, to find out the rate, because you have to find it out for the month, what monthly rate is. And then F9 times B5, which would be the number of payments in total. And so in this case, then, if we look at the first one here, we see if it's a 25-year loan, so 25 times 12, that gets you how many payments in total are going to be made. And then D minus D9, which is, let's see, D9 is the amount financed. And so you have to put minus D9 in order for you to be able to be displayed as a positive number, because usually it would display when you do this as a negative number. And we don't want it displayed as a negative number. We want the payment displayed as a positive number. And so again, just quickly in summary, by using Excel formulas functions, you can perform complicated data analyses. There are 3 types of cell references that we discussed: relative, absolute, and mixed. And Excel functions include math and statistics, date, logical lookup, and financial calculations. All right. Go ahead and open up to page 492. And I've already went ahead and extracted and downloaded the exercise files. So hopefully you can do that. Here, I'll just open up. Okay. And so that now we're working in chapter 2. And a file that we need to open is called EO2H1 loans. All right. And again, we get this yellow warning. It says, be careful, files from the internet can contain viruses. Unless you need to edit, it's safer to stay in protected view. We know it's okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit enable. All right. And then it says that they'd like us to go ahead and save this as EO2H1 loans last first. So we'll do that. So we'll go up here to File. We'll go up here to Save As. And I'm just going to browse just to show you. So I'm going to browse. My exercise files are stored on the desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you. So I'm going to go to the desktop. I have a folder on my desktop called AOM30. I'm going to click on that. I have an Excel folder, Chapter 2 folder. And then I'm just going to go down here and then underscore. Abbott David, because that's my name. You'll go ahead and put whatever your name is there. And then we'll go ahead and save. All right. So that's step 1, is we went ahead and we saved it. So now, step B, it says to click on cell D8. So D and then 8 would be right here. Again, in the detail sheet, so we want to make sure we're on the right sheet. Eventually, we will use both of these. And so we're going to type in the equal sign. And then we can click on B8, because that contains the first house cost. And then we'll hit the minus C8, because that's the down payment amount. Then you can either press enter on your keyboard or press the check mark up here. And that sets that. And so again, the first borrower financed or borrowed $320,000. The difference between the cost of his home, which is $400,000, and then he put down a down payment of $80,000. All right. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and double click on the fill handle in D8, and that will copy down. Now, the reason why we're able to do that, and the reason why we're able to use this formula is because we do want that to change as it goes down. There's nothing there that we need to hold as a constant, okay? So again, we can see if we click on cell D9, we can see it's B9 minus C9, and then we can, and B10 minus C10, and so on and so forth, okay? So now we'll go ahead and click on F8. And so we'll type in there the following. So equals E8 divided by E5. And again, it doesn't matter if, I'm sorry, pardon, B5. There we go. And then we can go ahead and click up here. Now watch what happens. And I know in the chat, you're probably screaming at me. You're saying, wow, you know, Mr. Abbott, you made a mistake. What do you notice here? Let me see if I can maybe make this window smaller. So tell me in the chat, what did I do wrong? Something wrong with this formula. So you notice here that in cell F9, you notice in cell F10, and then you notice in cell what is that, 11 and 12, you notice that something went wrong here. And again, the reason for that is if you look at the formula, notice what it did. It went off. Went off. Whoa. Yeah, completely. Okay, so the reason for that is, again, we need to make this number of payments. We need to go ahead and make that constant. This other I don't want constant. So the E8 I don't, because we do want that to change. Okay. Let me go and make this bigger. Okay. So if you notice, again, you want to avoid typing directly into formulas. Therefore, you use a reference to cell B5, which is the number of payments per year. Okay. And again, this could change. Some people I know have mortgages where they pay it bi-monthly, so they pay it, or bi-weekly, I mean. Bi-weekly, so they pay it every 2 weeks. Some people pay it, could pay it quarterly. I know, like I have an life insurance policy, I pay every quarter. So this allows you then, if you don't just type in there directly and you reference it to something, then you can change that, and then it will change everything accordingly. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go up here, we'll click on F8, and then I want us to undo, so we can just well, let's see if I can undo it. There we go. All right. So we'll undo it, and then we'll go ahead and click on F5, and then what I'm going to have to do is hit function F4. Otherwise, it's going to turn off the microphone. I don't want to do that. So function F4. If you're on a desktop machine, you can probably just go ahead and hit F4. That would set this. That's what I want. So that's what I want. And then I can go ahead and press enter. So again, it's an absolute cell reference. We always want the formula to reference B5. All right. And so then we'll go ahead and double click on the fill handle. Notice now that we had F9, F8, or E8, E9, E10, E11, E12. We do want those to change, but we always want it to refer to the number of payments per year. Pretty neat, huh? So now we can go ahead and save the worksheet, and then go ahead and flip on over to page 494. So now we'll go ahead and click in cell H8. We'll type in there equals G8, and then multiply, which is the asterisk, by B5. And are we going to have the same problem here? Because we're trying to figure out how many total payments are going to be made. So we have the years here. We have how many payments in a year here. We're going to have the same problem. So we're going to click on B5, and we'll go up here and hit F4. And so now it's going to say this. We actually can go ahead and do this. We can hit F4 again. So it's like this. This is a mixed reference. So B and then $5. You can do that. So we'll hit enter. All right. And then we can go and double click. In this case, it doesn't matter if you use either the absolute or mixed. Either one will work and will come out correctly. Okay. So what we can do is go ahead and click the save button. That was pretty simple. I think it was. So now go ahead and flip your book over to page 503. And so this time now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and learn how to use some of the functions that are available to us within Excel. So first of all, I need to resave this. So I'm going to go up here to File, and I'm going to go to Save As. And I'm going to go ahead and click, since I know that that's the location. And I'm going to change this to EO2H2. I believe, though, what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and go down to B16. And then what we can do is just go up here. Notice, again, under the Home tab in the ribbon, under Editing, you have the Auto Sum button. Okay, so we can click on that. Notice that Excel anticipates the range of cells containing values that you want to sum based on where you enter the formula. In this case, A8 to D15. That is not the correct range, so we have to enter in the correct range. All right, so flip on over to 504. So then what we can do is go ahead and select B5 to B12. That's fine. Though we know that those are the correct numbers. And again, you notice it's highlighted in blue, so that helps you to know that that's what you want. That's selected, so go ahead and hit enter. So you should come out with 1,521,200. Then we can go ahead and save the workbook. And so now what you can do is we'll go ahead and click on B17. And then you notice under the auto sum, you notice that there's an arrow here. So we'll click on the arrow, and then you have average. So we'll click on average. And then you notice that Excel selects B16, which is the total cost of the homes. That's not correct. So we'll go ahead and go up here, choose B8 to B12. And then we can press enter. The average house cost is $304,240. And then we can save the workbook. And then we'll go down here to B18. This time, what we need to do is to go ahead and click on Insert Function. And so that's this button right here. It's the F of X. So we're going to click on that function. You notice then that this dialog box appears. And in the search box right here, we're going to go ahead and start typing median. And then click Go. And we want median. So that's the one we want. And so we'll click OK. And then this other box is displayed. And we can click on this button right here. This collapses the dialog box down. And then we can go ahead and select B8 to B12. And we can click here again. And then we can go ahead and click OK. So then what we found out is that half of the houses purchased cost more than the median, $329,750, and half of the houses cost less than this value. Okay. Again, notice the difference between the median and the average. The average is lower because it's affected by the lowest cost home of $175,005. So again, that's just something to be aware of. Sometimes the average is the median, but again, we know from statistics that that isn't always the case. Again, the median is the middle number. Okay. And so then we'll go ahead and we'll figure out the min, max, and the number of mortgages that count. So we'll go ahead and select B19. We'll go up here to the auto sum arrow. We'll click on min. And then we'll go ahead and select B8 to B12 again. It tells us that the lowest price home is $175,500. And we'll click on B20. We'll go up here, click on the auto sum the arrow. Max. Likewise, we still need to choose B8 to B12. Enter. The highest price house is $400. And then what we need to do is we want to figure out how many mortgages we have. This one, I mean, this is pretty, some of these are kind of silly because this is a fairly small data set. But again, remember that in Excel, you could have hundreds or you could have thousands of rows of data. And so that's why we're teaching you this. So we'll go ahead and type equals. We'll type in count. And then we'll do open parenthesis, B8 colon B12, closed parenthesis. So we know that we have 5 mortgages. And again, you notice that as you typed in the C, formula autocomplete, it suggests functions that start with C. As you continue counting, the number of functions narrows. After you type the beginning parentheses, it displays the function screen tip indicating the arguments that need to be there. And so we see then that the range of B8 to B12 contains 5 cells. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and select the range of B16 to B21 because we want to copy the cells all at one time to the next 2 columns. And then we can click on the fill handle and we can drag across. All right. And so we're good there. Now, what we can do now is that fills everything in accordingly. So now what we can do is click on cell B9. And let's say this person, they decided that they wanted a house. So we're going to go ahead and change that from 350,000 to 425,000. Press enter, notice what happens. It's going to update our statistics down here at the bottom. It's also going to update the amount of how much they're putting down, how much they're doing, etc. Okay. We'll go ahead and save our workbook. And then we'll go up here and select B4. And this time we're going to use the today function. And so what we'll do is we'll go up under formulas in the ribbon. We'll click on that. You notice you have various functions here. So you have auto sum under the function library, recently used, financial, logical, text, date and time, lookup and reference, math and trigonometry, and other functions. What we want is is time and date. So we're going to click on that. And then we're going to go down and choose the today function. And then it pops up this box and it says that it returns the current date formatted as a date. This function takes no arguments and it says the cell results are volatile. What that means is that it's going to modify each time that this is opened, it will change. So if, let's say, I save this, I close Excel, I come back tomorrow, when I go to open up this file, it will change to tomorrow's date if I open it tomorrow. Okay? And again, it's based on the date of the computer, whatever's set in the computer for the date. So we'll click OK, and then it goes ahead and inserts today's date. So we'll go ahead and hit save. And then we can do one more thing. And so we can go ahead and go up here to, let's see, in the cells group. So I think we have to go back to home. So if we go back to home, we go to cells and in format, we can auto fit column width. Okay, and that just makes it a little bit tidier. Go up here to File. We'll go up here to Save As. We'll save our work. And then we'll go ahead and change this to E02H3 now. We'll go ahead and hit Save. So now we're done with the details worksheet. So we'll go ahead and click on the payment info worksheet. Again, we talked about this on Monday. Realize that you can have more than one worksheet in an Excel workbook. So a file in Excel is a workbook, can contain multiple worksheets. All right. And so this worksheet displays containing the data to complete now. And so we'll go ahead and click on cell G9, which is the APR. And then what we're going to do is, again, go up here to our Formulas tab in the ribbon. We'll click on Lookup and References. We'll click on VLOOKUP. And I'm just going to move this window. And so the argument dialog box appears. And I just moved it out of the way just so that we could see what we're doing. So then we want to make sure that we have that the lookup value, that the cursor's blinking there. It is. So we'll click on this button to collapse the dialog box. And then we'll click on cell F9. And then we'll go ahead and expand the dialog box. And F9 contains the value that we need to look up in this table, the table right here, to figure out what the APR would be. Okay. Then we can hit the tab button on our keyboard. That moves us down to the table array, and then we can select the range D4 to E4. So just our values. So D4 to E6. All right. Now, this is the range that contains that data for the lookup table. The years values in the table are arranged from lowest to highest. And then we, again, do not want the column labels. So we do not want years and rate. We just want the actual data. So we've done that. Anticipate what will happen if you copy the formula down that column. We're going to have some problems, aren't we? What do you need to do to ensure that the cell references always point to the exact locations on the table? If your answer is to make the table array cells absolute, then you answered correctly. Okay, so now we should know that that's what we have to do. So what we can do is we'll click on D4, and then we'll hit the F4 key on our keyboard. So that sets that. And then we'll do the same thing over here. Now, again, you can also go in and manually enter the dollar signs there as well. All right. And again, the reason we're doing that is because when we copy this down, we always want it to point to that. All right. And so then the col index num, we're going to go ahead and select enter 2 because we have the second column contains the rates that we want it to return. So that's what we want it to return, is what's in that second column. And then under the lookup range box, we'll go ahead and type in there false. And to ensure that the exact match to lookup in the table, we'll type in false as the optional argument. So it either will return exactly what's listed there or it will return nothing. Okay. Then we could go ahead and click OK. And then we notice then that the VLOOKUP function uses the first loan's term in years, which is 25, to find an exact match in the second column of the lookup table. Then returns the corresponding rate, which is in the second column, which is 3.625%. Then what we can do then is go ahead and click here, double click, that copies it down. And again, you can spot check the results to make sure that the function returned the correct APR based on the number of years. So we see here for the second one, we see here that it's a 30-year loan, so it should be 3.750. It is. And we see here for this one, it's a 15-year loan, it should be 3.250. And that's what it returned. So we know that we did it correctly. So then we can go ahead and save our work. All right. So now then what we can do is we'll go ahead now and use the PMT function. So now we'll go ahead and click on H9. And then we'll go up again in the formulas bar. We'll go up here to financial. And we'll go ahead and scroll down to the PMT function. Again, it brings up this box here, the dialog box, to enter in our arguments. All right. Okay. And so then what we need to do for the rate is we're going to go ahead and type in there G9 and then the slash, which is divided by B5. So G9 divided by B5. Now, think about what will happen if you copy the formula. The argument will be G10 divided by B6 for the next customer. Are those cell references correct? B10 does contain the APR for the next customer, but B6 doesn't contain the correct number of payments in 1 year. Therefore, you need to make B5 an absolute cell reference because the number of payments per year does not vary. Okay, so right here, the number of payments will always be B12. So what we'll do is we'll click on B5, and this time we can go ahead and just do that. So we'll go ahead and hit function. For me, I have to hit function F4. For you, could probably just hit F4. It depends on what kind of computer. But again, F4 on the keyboard, that is what's used to designate this. Okay. You can hit tab or you can click in the inper, which is for number of periods. And so we'll enter in there F9. So cell reference F9, which is the number of years. And then we can multiply that. So we'll type that in there. And then $B, $5. Because again, that's going to stay constant. Okay, 12 payments in a year. We'll hit tab. The present value, we'll type in there a minus D9. Oops. Yeah. D9, which again, D9 is the amount that's financed. Now we enter that in as a negative value because we want the payment amount to show up as a positive value. All right. And then at the bottom of the dialog box, although I don't, right here, tells you that the formula result is going to be $1,723.73. That's what we have. That's correct. So we'll go ahead and click OK. So that'll be what their monthly payment is, and then we can double click to copy it down for the rest of the column, and then we'll go ahead and save our work. Okay, so now we'll use the if function. And so lenders often want borrowers to have at least a 20% down payment. So when you, I don't know if any of you have ever bought a home, but when you buy a home, they usually want you to put down at least 20% of the price. If borrowers don't put down 20% of the cost of the home as a down payment, they have to pay what's called private mortgage insurance, or PMI. And what that does is that is insurance that doesn't insure you, it insures the lender. Okay. PMI serves to protect lenders from absorbing loss if the borrower defaults on a loan means that they don't pay the loan. It enables borrowers with less cash to secure a loan. The PMI fee is about 0.38% of the amount that's financed. Some borrowers have to pay the PMI for a few months or years until the balance owed is less than 80% of the appraised value, or what the home is worth. The worksheet contains the necessary values in the input area, and you can use the if function to determine what borrowers have to pay PMI and how much they will pay. And so you can refer in your textbook on page 519 to figure 2.28 to complete step 3. All right, so for right now, we'll go ahead and click on cell I9. And again, that cell will store the PMI if there is any for that first customer. So then we'll go up here again under formulas. We'll go ahead and click on logical. Then we'll click on if. And it brings up the dialog box. And I'll just move it out of the way just so that we can see what we're doing. So you will enter the 3 arguments. So we'll type in there E9 is greater, is greater or equal to $B $7. And so let me come up here. And in this case, it is. And so what that means is that the down payment is greater than the down payment rate, which is 20%. And in this case, we see it is. So it tells us that it's true. Okay. So we can hit tab. And so if the value is true, they're not going to have to pay any PMI. So we can enter value of true is 0. All right, and then flip on over to page 520. So we'll go down here now to the value if it's false. So we'll type in there D9. And then again, multiply $B $6 divided by $B $5. And the value. And so again, if the logical test is false, the customer would have to pay PMI, which is calculated by multiplying the amount that's financed, which is what is listed in D9. So D9, the amount this first customer is financing is $339,750, by the periodic PMI rate, which is a result by dividing the yearly PMI rate that's listed in B6, which is 0.38%, dividing that by the number of payments per year, which is in B5, which is 12. Then we could go ahead and click OK. And again, we notice for this first customer, they're putting down more than 20%, so they don't have to pay PMI. So then what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and double click, copies down. So we notice then that this customer here on row 11 and row 12, they each have to pay PMI because each of them put down less than 20%. All right. And then they want us, G we can skip, we're not printing, but I'll show you how to do it anyway, and you can do it. So if we go up here to page layout, we can make sure the orientation is set to landscape. And actually we could go ahead and select both of these worksheets. So I just hit Control and then click, so both of these are selected. So if we select the orientation to landscape, and then we can go over here, click on this button right here, the More button, Page Setup, Dialog Box Launcher. And so we want it to fit 1 page wide to 1 page tall, landscape, and we could go over here, so we can go down here to Custom Footer. And we could type in your name on the left, put the sheet code in the center, which is right here. And then in the right, you could enter in the file name. And we click OK. You can see in the preview then, and then you can click on Print Preview. And then notice then that it's going to come up then. You get an idea of what it would look like if we were to print it. All right. So then what you could do is save it, and then if you're finished, you can go ahead and submit that to Canvas.